Hello and welcome back to session number 6 of our learning, preparing for success. Easy for me to say. So, my name is Jason Taylor, and I'm with Western Joint Electrical Training Society. And in this lesson, what we're going to look at is exam preparation. I'm sure that this one doesn't need a lot of introduction because I think everyone has this already in mind. It is the big one that everybody is so worried about. Now, every other lesson that we've looked at in the past, lessons 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, have been able to get to this point. So it really is important to make sure that we're doing our study as we go, so that this now is going to be what we're going to do in the event of the exam. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to refer back to some of the other lessons as we go here. So writing our SLEs, or our standard level exams, and our interprovincial exam, or a red seal, we call that, that's what we're looking at, is the ultimate goal. Now, inside of your learning, you're going to also need to have some in-school exams. So they will fall within this, but this is going to be kind of more specifically about writing multiple choice exams. But the same study is going to come into play when it's different formats of exams. So making sure that you pay attention to the lessons beforehand are important as well. Strategies for multiple choice exams, and before that, some generic stuff. Okay, everyone suffers exam anxiety to some extent. Very few people don't. However, some people suffer it very extremely. A lot of those things are about you haven't prepared in advance. So making sure that you followed our lessons up until now, and you make sure you pay attention to lesson number 7, the next one about time management. That will really help in the preparation. So we can strike that off of this little table. Pressure. That one's a tough one because everyone knows what's riding on these exams. The weight of the world is on your shoulders. But you have to kind of put this into perspective. The world will still exist the next day. That sun will rise again. If the worst happens, you have to retake the test, or maybe you have to go back to school. Those are the worst case scenarios. None of them mean you're going to be eating from a soup kitchen, or it shouldn't. None of them mean that you're going to be losing anything crazy. It's just not ideal. So we can try and manage that stress by just thinking about it doesn't need to be there. We put a lot of that pressure on ourselves. If you're challenging an exam, don't tell anybody you're doing it. Just go and do it. And when you pass, then everybody's all happy. But as soon as you start to tell people you're going to write that exam, now all of a sudden that anticipation is there. The expectation is there. Now the pressure's there. Okay? So just chill. Negative experiences. You've had some exam problems in the past. Okay? We can't go back and fix those. But what we can do is take those negative experiences and let them be a positive experience, a learning experience going forward. The only exam that I ever put my mark onto my fridge, and I kept it there for years, was the worst exam I ever wrote. I did my apprenticeship in Alberta, and Alberta did a little differently, and electronics was all done in the level 4 part of the program. I was in contention for the top student of the year for the and I was doing great. I worked my butt off and I was doing great, but I kind of got into that coaster mode for a little bit. And in an electronics exam, I was given the information, I had the textbooks, I had everything that I needed. What I didn't do was prepare. I didn't read it. I didn't listen in class. I didn't participate in class. I got cocky. It was about symbols and diagrams. Let me tell you, If you have not seen those before, it is really hard to be able to determine what's what in an exam. It was like Greek. It might as well have been Greek that was put in front of me. So, the reason why I tell you this story is because I received the worst mark that I have ever had on that exam. It took me out of contention for the Golden Clines, or the Top Apprentice Award, for that year, and it made me feel embarrassed, like really, really deeply embarrassed. I had nobody to blame but me. I didn't do it, and I knew that right away. I knew it the moment they put the exam in front of me. I felt shame. That was my motivator. If you've had a negative experience with an exam in the past, please use that as motivation. Don't dwell on it. It's a motivator. Do better. Here's how. We want to break that cycle, okay, of the negative experiences. We want to use that knowledge and those experiences to do better. Again, we want to try and follow these steps and make sure that we got a proper study regime, and we're doing all the things that we talked about in all the other lessons to help reduce that anxiety and increase that success. We want to make sure that you do a proper study. Not only do we want to see you succeed in this exam, we want good, knowledgeable, intelligent, applicable apprentices and journey persons out there. Now, I realize that there's not necessarily you can be a good field person and not be a good academic person. Agreed. However, we have a high degree of technical knowledge that's needed. It's not all just about bending pipe and, pulling in wire. We have to know what size wire has to go in there. We have to know how fires can be caused. We have to know the properties of stuff. So we can be the installer of things, or we can be a professional electrician. This is a choice that you get to make. So I am just simply saying, putting in a little bit of effort in your study regime can really help open doors and minimize stress. When should we be studying? Just take a moment every day, about a week in advance, the day before, or all of the above. Okay, I'm going to go with all of the above. All of the above simply means that if we're doing a little bit of study each and every day, we're doing a focal thing a week in advance to be able to make sure that we're focusing specifically for that exam and the requirements of that exam. And the day before, yes, we'll look at some stuff, but we're not going to do a cram session. The cram sessions are counterproductive. They may help you pass that exam, maybe, but they're also going to cause you a tremendous amount of anxiety. And if they do help you pass that exam, good luck on the next one, where you're now building and it's a cumulative amount of information, and you've just now done that cram, and 24 hours after that, you're going to be lost about 80% of that. And now you got to do that again for every exam. Or you put in a 15, 20 minutes a day, and you don't have the stress. Prepare each day. Complete your homework. Just do the work. You, generally speaking, are going to have 6 hours of classroom time a day. Maybe just under 6 hours. And a regular work day is 8 hours minimum. Okay, for most of us, 8, 10 hours, even 12. So that's a lot less time than what you normally would be putting in anyway. That 2 hours, that's your study time. Just turn it into a regular workday. Don't think about school as being a vacation or a break. Think about it as being a workday. It is the easiest way to get yourself into the productive, successful mindset. It's still work, but it's just different. It's different work. You gotta make the allowance for it. So complete that homework and readings every day. Write and recite ideas in your own words. That's really important one, but make sure that they're still accurate. You're not using some weird ass words that don't mean the same thing that you think they mean. Make notes for yourself. Okay? Make them. Don't rely on other people. Make notes. Schedule yourself enough study time. We will look at that in session number 7. Important to make sure you schedule that in because you are important too, and so is your family life, okay, and your personal life. You need to make sure that we schedule in the important things in life. But we need to make sure that we're not having to repeat this because that will affect all aspects of your life again. So make sure you do it right the first time. Get help if you become confused. We have tutoring sessions. Please reach out. Get the facts about the exam. You want to know what is going to be covered on the exam. What are they testing? As much detail as possible. They're not going to tell you the questions that they're going to ask. Come on, that's ridiculous. But they will tell you about the concepts that they're going to test. The more you know of the concepts, it doesn't matter the questions that they ask you. You can hit them all out of the park. Always look to understand concept instead of memorizing answers. Oh my. That is the worst way to ever go about entering this, is by regurgitating answers. Where is that exam? What classroom? What location? Because this all adds to that anxiety. If you know where it's going to be the night before the exam, you're not going to be up at night thinking, oh, how am I going to get there? How long is it going to take? What if I don't get a good seat? You'll know in advance and you can sleep peacefully. When is that exam? Same thing. You don't want to be thinking about that the night before the exam because it'll cause stress, and that's the whole cycle of anxiety. Believe me, I've been there too. Condense and summarize your notes. Okay, you've been taking notes daily. Condense them. Start to take a look at what's happened over the course of time in your lessons. And you're going to start out with all of these things that just seem like they're so big on themselves. And then you start to realize that they're little pieces that all add towards this other piece, but you just needed to study them and learn them a little bit so that you can understand why they're doing this. Condense it. You're coming from a new place of knowledge now. So before that exam, condense it. Take a look at what leads to what leads to what leads to what. It's so much easier doing it this way. Slap in the face doing it the other way. You don't need to memorize everything. Once you see what's happening, explain the headings and answer questions from memory. Being able to do that without having to be prompted really helps. Review and study your sheets frequently. Make sure you use decent visual aids for yourself. Creating summarization charts are really good. For level 1, this basically talks about your series circuits, your parallel circuits that you're going to deal with and in our second year, the add in the capacitance and your charge in coulombs. So all of these things can be summarized in some simple charts. For me, this is what I do with my classes all the time. And we create these things like daily in class. And so when it comes to exams, I mean, the class average is usually ridiculously high, and it's not because they knew what was the exam was on. In fact, I think my exams are pretty hard, but they find them easy because they're prepared for them. Because we do this on a routine basis. They get bored. They're bored. They're so prepared. And that is good. Diagrams to help us understand if we're looking at any 3-property thing like Ohm's law or something like that. If I'm looking for drop, I cover up drop and it's grade times run. If I'm looking for run, it's drop over grade. So I can use some visuals to help me with that transposition of equations or something. Again, just mind maps, charts. Using your flashcards. They're always good. They don't go to waste. They're going to be good. You make them in first year, you'll use them until you write that IP, and then hold on to them for your FSR. Okay, because You can keep using these things and give them to your kids if they become electricians or whatever. They can't all be that lucky. Use the course objectives from ITA or Skilled Trades BC, it's called now. Forgot to change that slide. Use the course objectives that are stated there. Again, those are the prompting things that tell you what you need to know. There's no magic here. They tell you what you need to know. And ultimately, they tell you what you need to be tested on. Now, that was a good segue to this. Anticipate the questions. If you already know that this is what I need to know, you can now make questions about it. Anticipatory questions. If you got together in a study group of a 3, optimal 3, if you get too many more than that, then it starts to become distracting. But if you have about 3, it's good because you get some unique ideas and whatnot from each of the participants. But make sure that you select well. You don't want water skiers in your group. The people that are constantly just holding on to you. You want to make sure that you're not that person either. So get together in study groups. When you do these flashcards, you can now trade them. Okay, and everybody has got some and you can also do some anticipatory questions and you can test each other on those. So again, this now leads towards you basically building yourself a final exam before you get your final exam. And people that have done that in the past usually crush those exams. Like it's not even a contest. Make use of your study groups. Very good. Okay, it's very hard to go through life solo. Okay, really, really hard. This needs some outside attention. You don't know what you don't know. And other people can sort of see that. We're not objective enough in our own thoughts and minds. We think we're really good with this. That's self reflection. Yeah, I know everything. Nobody does. But what if I have to cram? What if you something happened and whatever you need to? Be very selective. Okay, cramming is the worst because it's going to absolutely destroy that anxiety. Like it's going to enhance the anxiety, I should say. It's going to build that right up because now you're going to come across something that you're not comfortable with or you don't know, and now all of a sudden you're going to second guess yourself for everything. If you're going to cram the things you know. Don't get crazy. You're not going to be able to remember everything. You just won't. Cut your losses. You're going to do damage control with cramming. That's it. Skim your notes and modules for essential information. Make sure you're paying attention in those module informations for things that are highlighted or bolded or italicized or underlined or something like that, the big key things. But you're not going to get the memorization. Okay, it's not going to be there. So you might be able to kind of get through some basic concepts for sure. I'm not saying that it's not doable. I'm just saying it's not optimal because there's just going to be too much, especially when it comes up to your final exams. And when you talk about your Red Seal exam, it's at least 4 years of cumulative experiences between classroom and in the field. And the in the field is going to be based off the whole trade, not necessarily what you've seen of it. So you gotta spend some time doing some studies. Okay, and that is an argument that I have all the time with my Red Seal classes, because wow, some of them have been living in a crystal palace for a long time. I've only done this. Well, the ticket says you can do all of this other stuff, so they're going to test you on that other stuff too. So make sure you do know it. And cramming really is hard to be doing that with. So if you try to remember too much, you're going to end up confusing yourself. You're going to end up pushing known information out. You're going to jumble stuff up in your own head. Be selective. You're going to cause a lot of self-doubt. Be selective. When we are looking at strategies for multiple choice exams, always think about this. It's not actually from Star Trek, although it was used in Star Trek. This comes from Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Whenever you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. This is now a process of elimination. So multiple choice exams, we can certainly use that. Now, this is just a strategy, and I just liked to use this quote, but this is going to be one of our last things that we're going to do. I'm going to give you a couple more in advance. I'm sure that you've heard various different strategies throughout of writing multiple choice. Common ones are choose C if you don't know, or choose the longest answer, choose the shortest answer. They know this when they're putting together these exams. They're using random distribution automation in there to try and make sure that they're scrambling those things to give a reasonable spread of A, B, C, and D responses. They are very careful to use terms that are very plausible in every distractor in there. There will be only one right answer, but the other ones might seem it unless you know your information. If you only have a surface knowledge of stuff, they all look like they could be. So make sure you do know your stuff, because this exam is put together by a large committee. It's not a single person creating this. It's being looked at by multiple angles and tried to strip out any biases. Now, did they get it right all the time? Of course not. But for the most part, they're pretty good. So just be careful. Be careful of the exam strategies. Now, one of those exam strategies, though, that I really do like is that you're going to enter this exam and you're going to do it in 3 sweeps. 3 sweeps of the exam, meaning the first sweep is you're going to pick all the low-hanging fruit. Just pretend that you're picking fruit off of a tree, a cherry tree. Okay, a big one. You're going to pick all that fruit that's like laying on the ground or it's easy to reach. You're not having to work for it. Roughly about 55 to 60% of that exam will be that low-hanging fruit. You know your basic terms. You know your basic, how these things basically work and stuff like that. So you haven't really had to study too hard, but you have had to study a bit. You got to differentiate between terms. Good. You put those in the basket. You're not just answering starting at 1 and going to 100 sequentially, because some of those easier questions are going to be found at the end of the exam. And you're throwing away marks because every question is worth 1 mark. From the easiest question to the hardest question. You're going to see that there's going to be a handful of really hard questions in there. A handful. You're going to get stumped on those, and now you're going to lose those marks that you didn't get to at the end because you took all your time answering those hard ones at the beginning. That was still worth 1 mark. Doesn't make sense. 3 sweeps. First sweep, low-hanging fruit, and go through. Answer all the questions. As soon as you come across one that's going to take more than 5 minutes, I'm going to say 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Give yourself that. If you can't come up with an answer within 3 minutes, move on to the next question. Do that through the entirety of the exam and then come back. Second sweep. Now you're going for questions that are between 3 minutes and 5 minutes. 3 minutes and 5 minutes. That's now a few calculations, maybe some code lookups, something like that. It's going to take you a little bit of time, but it's not going to take you a ton of time. Answer as many of those as you can, going through wherever you can. Then you come back for your third sweep. Your third sweep, now you're pulling out that extension ladder and you're trying to get to the top of the tree with all the tools. These are the hard to reach questions. These are the ones that are put in there to separate the A+ students from the B students. They're not intended to be easy. They are intended to be challenging. That's why you don't want to attempt those first sweep, even if you are that A+ student. Take the easy marks first. So then you go back and you're going to do your calculations. You're going to do your extended lookups. You're going to do all of those things. They're going to take time. But you're making sure that you got all the easy ones in your basket first. Okay? That's solid strategy right there. Arrive early. Arriving early at your exam is very good. So not only is it respectful, it is also about easing that anxiety. When you arrive in a huff and you're a little bit late, or even you're just coming in straight on time, you're now all befuddled. Okay. And you're breathing hard. You're like, oh, trying to find a seat. Then it's just stress, unnecessary stress. Just be early. Allows you to relax and get mentally prepared. Just get into the zone. Avoid any last minute discussions with classmates. You will find that there's going to be classmates that are very sure of themselves and they're very loud. It doesn't mean they're right. As an instructor for over 20 years, I can tell you that the loudest usually isn't the rightest. It's not always the true, but it's not always it's more true than not. So just be careful with that. It will also start to cause you to second guess yourself. No need. Talk about the weather, talk about the hockey, talk about all of that stuff. Don't worry about talking about that exam and stuff in it. There's nothing you can do about it then anyway. Select yourself a seat that will minimize the distraction. Stay away from the door, stay away from the windows. I know it's tempting because it's beautiful, but it's when stuff's moving around out there, we're like attention deficit, we're going to be chasing squirrels. Put yourself in a position for success that you can focus. Okay? Hate to say it, but front row. Create yourself a cheat sheet. Before you even start that exam, you're going to be given a scratch sheet of paper for your calculations or whatever. Jot down anything that you were worried about or you could forget. Definitions, formulas, equations, dates, key ideas, anything like that that we talked about. Those acronyms that we talked about in previous session with the or the mnemonic devices for memorization. This is where I would recommend everybody writes down like their SOHCAHTOAs and their basic formulas, even if you know them really, really well. The problem is that these well-constructed exams will start to have you all second guessing yourself because they're going to write things in awkward and wrong ways because they're trying to assure themselves that they're certifying people that actually know their stuff that didn't just guess the stuff because it had the right things in there. Ohm's law has to be in the right way. Current is the result of the voltage divided by the resistance. They might have some distractors in there that are talking about it in different sequence, but they're using the right terms. And now all of a sudden you start to think, well, is it this or is it that? You second guess yourself. If you have it written before you've even been tainted by that exam that's messing with your brain and it's on that sheet, you just go back and that's a way to ground yourself. And there's a second reason why you want to do this. That anxiety can be crippling, especially when you start to look at some of these questions and they start to look very daunting. Like I say, there's a handful of questions in there that are very challenging. They're not for the faint of heart. You catch one of those in the early areas of your exam, it will throw you. Or if you're doing your survey and you happen to catch one of those things. And now this just helps you put your mind at ease. I know stuff. I'm going to write it down here. I'm going to fill this page. It's going to be awesome. I deserve to be here. That's what this value is for this cheat sheet. You can't bring one in, but you sure as heck can make it right there. And it will be better than anything that they provide for you by far. Do not rely on the formula sheets that they give you. They will give them to you, but they're not a cheat sheet. It doesn't take away from your studying. In fact, ever since they've started giving those formula sheets, our marks have been going down. People are becoming too reliant on them. Preview your test. You want to skim through that test before you start. You want to do a quick survey of it. Make sure that all the pages are there. Make sure that you kind of feel comfortable with what you got in there. And look up the types and numbers of questions that are being asked. You can start to maybe do a quick identification of the first sweep, second sweep, third sweep type of questions. Don't get crazy in detail, read these things, just a quick overview. Again, making sure that you can identify the beginning and the end of that exam and all areas that are covered in there. And then you can sort of see if there's something there like, oh man, I don't even remember ever doing that. Okay, no worries. That's one mark. No problem. Make sure you get the other ones right. Okay, so don't let a question ruin your day. It's not worth it. Okay, you're going to get 99% today. And who knows, maybe you're going to get lucky and get that 100%. Budget your time. This is another one that throws people with that anxiety. Okay, all of a sudden they start running out of time and they start just filling in bubbles and getting all angry and frustrated and thrashing around and stuff like that. It's a really good rule of thumb to try and ensure that you have 60% of your exam completed within 50% of the time. This is more about psychological than it is anything else. You're going to be doing more than that anyways if you're doing the 3 sweeps. I will almost guarantee, as long as you've done your study in advance and you prepared properly, you are going to have probably 70% of that exam in 50% of the time, because you're going to have done all of the easy questions. Now, if you've done 70% of that exam in 50% of the time, and they're the easy questions and you feel pretty comfortable with those, the passing mark is 70%, you don't need to stress. You probably already got pretty close to passing mark then. Don't give up now. Now is earning the gravy points, the bragging points, and the margin of error points. Here is something that we are all really guilty of. We read what we want to read. Make sure you're reading what the question is actually asking. RTFQ, read the full question. Reread it. Make sure it still says what you thought it said. Make sure you know what you have to do. Nervousness will lead to rushing, which leads to misreading directions. And you're going to do the wrong thing. Okay, and cockiness does that too. Overconfidence, overtiredness, anxiousness, all of that leads to this. The human nature leads to that. Just be very careful. RTFQ, read the full question. Substitute the F for whatever you want. Okay, this is our 3 sweeps thing. Don't waste your energy and your mental capacity and your nervousness and I don't know. Don't even waste any time on those hard questions at first. Do all of the easy ones, 3 sweeps. First sweep, grab all the easy ones. Okay, simple as can be. Answer the easy questions first, return for the more difficult ones in 3 consecutive sweeps. Be very deliberate about that and keep to the time with them. 1 to 3 minutes for sweep 1, 3 to 5 minutes for sweep 2, and anything more than 5 minutes is a sweep 3. Read each question very carefully. This is the RTFQ. Read the question slowly. I would cover the answers first, because when you read that question, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to envision what the answer could be before you start to convince yourself of the correctness of any of the distractors. We all keep jumping at the easy ones, right? But what does the question actually ask? Underline keywords in there. Now be careful. If this is a standard level exam, it's a provincial or federal exam, you want to be careful because they don't want you writing in those books. But if you put a little light pencil mark under it and then you erase it after, it really does help to identify. In your in-class exams, if they're not taking back those books, write all over them. I always make sure that they're writable for my classes because I want them to do this. It's practice and preparation. Put the questions into your own words. It makes it easier to conceive, but you got to make sure that it is still the same meaning. That's why it's so important to go through your note taking in advance and doing that, because that helps you practice for this. Name the concept of the part of the course the question may come from. Again, that helps when you're studying to the concept and now you get to that exam and now you're just like, oh, what was that concept? Oh yeah, it's this. So in this case, this needs to be this needs to be this. It makes it so much easier. Be alert for statements like the definitive statements, the no's or the accepts in them. The statements like nots or excepts. Always be aware the ors, the ands, any of those type of things. Okay, because they can change. An or and an and are not the same thing. Okay, and Canadian Electrical Code, they use those extensively. Okay, a lot. Be alert for the definitive statements like the always, musts, and nevers. Those are very rarely going to be the right thing. They could be, but I'm going to err on the side of caution and say no, not always, unless prove it right. Produce your own answer. And that's what I was talking about before. Cover up the answers, read the question, read it carefully, and then try and answer it in your brain at first by conceptualizing the concept that they're trying to test. When they're testing about Ohm's law, they're looking about a relationship. Okay, what are the factors that affect the current? Cover that answer, and you can just think about it. Current is the result of the voltage pushing and the resistance impeding. Being able to do that is going to really help you. Really help you. Have your own answers lessens the possibility of becoming confused over the options. Now only one. And we often see people say, well, there was 2 right answers in there. No, there isn't. Okay, I almost guarantee there's too many eyes on them. And not only that, when these answers and these exams do get reviewed regularly, so every time that they're written, they take a look at those answers and they take a look at what was right and what was wrong. Any that's been getting constantly low marks, they reanalyze that. Use a systematic approach when you're doing your sweeps. Cover your options. So cover all the options and have something in mind, and then you can start to do uncover A, then B, then C, then D. Okay, and sequence. If option A is, when you get to there, could it be right? Is it an absolute no, or is it a question mark? Could it be right? Okay, using something like that beside each of those things really helps to determine, and then move on to the next option and do that all the way down. And you can usually identify an absolute truth in there. Repeat the steps until you've got an answer. Move on to the next question. If it is hard, if you are starting to get confused, if you're starting to get anxiety, if you're starting to get self-doubt, if any reason, it is not worth it. Move on, come back later. The other advantage to this is that later in that exam, you might come across something else that just all of a sudden, boop, it pops that back into your head. And now you can go back and answer it because now you remember. This happens with our code questions all the time. As you're looking for something else, you come across something that you were desperately trying to find before you knew it was there, but you can't find it. Code questions will kill your time. In the Red Seal exam, about 65% of that exam is coming from the Canadian Electrical Code Book. You want to be very careful in wasting your time. So move on. The question may come up later that triggers you to be able to answer that. It'll bring it back where you come across. That one's really handy. Okay, really handy. If no answer is apparent, this is where you're now going to use that process of elimination. When you're going to rule out everything it can't be. Apply the truth-false litmus test. Okay? And that's just simple. Is that statement in fact true? Could it be even possible? Because a lot of times when you start to see that, no, it sounds really smart, but it doesn't actually work. It's the opposite of reality. It can't be the right answer. It's a false statement. If 2 answers seem that they're correct, and this is what I've been talking about, this is where they catch us all the time, select the specific over more general answers. The more specific the question is, the more specific the answer should be. The more general the question is, the more general the answer should be in a general sense. Avoid the alls, nevers, and always statements. Those Only answer those if you know it's right. Okay, be wary anytime they use definitive statements like that. Be careful of two responses saying the same thing. If they're both saying the same thing, they're probably both wrong. Okay, and you won't see that on the Red Seal exam. They're too scrutinized. They got too many eyes on them. They're going to take one of those away if there's two right answers. If math is required, use your formulas. Know them. Okay? In class, don't try to avoid the math. Okay? Try and get at that. Get at it. Know the formulas. Know them inside and out. Write them down all the time. Use your flashcards. Know your formulas. If there's one thing that you want to make sure that you know by the end of your term is the formulas and what they represent. Transpose them correctly. That means you're going to find if I know that my I equals E over R, I can now find E if I know I and R. I'm just going to have to move around that equation a little bit. That'll be something that'll be covered in your schooling. Don't necessarily just memorize those things. Take a look at how they work. If I know that 1 plus 2 equals 3, I know that 3 minus 2 equals 1. Okay, just using math principles. The opposites. The opposite of addition is subtraction. The opposite of multiplication is division. And just knowing your basic math in that regard really helps with some of the more advanced math. Again, that's something that will be covered in your schooling. Use a step-by-step approach. Okay, don't try and take 2 steps at the same time. If you're going to eat a pizza, you take it 1 bite at a time. Okay, or you're going to choke. That's the same with our math. We often make mistakes because we're not employing BEDMAS or the principles or the steps, the sequential steps required to solve. Work that problem in reverse if necessary. Okay? It might be a strategy for you. Again, once you get more comfortable with the concepts in math, these can help. If all else fails, close your eyes and go for it. You need to make sure that every answer gets answered or every question gets answered. The one thing that I want to caution you on to is that don't ever change an answer unless you know you were wrong. Always go with your gut instinct to begin with. Prove yourself wrong from that. I see it time and again where people will do that and they'll change their answer to an incorrect one because they talked themselves into it. And then afterwards they're like, oh, I knew that. Trust yourself and your initial instinct. Change it if you know you were wrong. Okay, something later on just rang a bell and you're like, no, it can't be that. It has to be this. There's no way. But don't do it if you're just be like, oh, a little wishy-washy. Don't do that. Just leave it. Okay, and walk away. But make sure every question has an answer and only one answer, because those machines will not score you a mark if there's more than one thing in that box. So be careful with that. So when and before you turn it in, just make sure everything is nice and clean. There's no multiple marks on that mark sheet. And turn it in. You should not have extra time. Okay? Go to the bitter end. I have seen people walk out of those exams. They usually will have a limit. On a Red Seal exam or an SLE, they're going to be like 2.5 hours or 3 hours, depending. 100 questions, lots of time. With those exams, I've seen people, they usually will say you have to be there for an hour. And at that hour mark, you're going to see a couple people get up and leave. And then everyone else is like, oh, they're done. How could they be done? They're so smart. Why am I so dumb? I will say that the being the marker and the facilitator on many of those exams, those people that walk out early don't usually do that well. Now, I'm only going by average. There, of course, is some exceptions to that. But in general, don't think that they know their stuff just because they're leaving early. Some of them just filled out AC/DC and ABBA. And they're They're done. Okay, that is it for this presentation. There is one more to go. Thank you for your time so far. I think you will find that this is going to be something that will be valuable for you in the future.